Hello, precious people. I'm Jacqueline Parks. Welcome to my studio, Stampin' Turtles. And today we're actually going to be painting turtles, so it's going to be fun. And if you don't know how to do advanced watercolors, this is the video for you. Let me make sure we can hear me. It's kind of hard sometimes. I'm all by myself. Oh, we do hear me. Yay. We hear me. Already my voice. Like I could talk fine before going live. What is that with the live button? That it just steals the voice. Sorry. Anyways, we are going to go forward, even if I have to be froggy voice. Froggy voice. What are you guys doing today? It's Monday. How was your weekend? What's going on in the world? Lots going on, right? But let me show you the thing about realism with watercolor. And here's the thing that I have a hard time putting it into words, but I can show. So that's why we go live, so I can show how I do this. It's not gimmicks. It's not a fast forward, skip areas, and you don't know what I just did. It's like magic. Boom, 3 strokes and it looks like hyperrealism. But let me show you something. So we're going to paint this, photo. Let me show you it. So these are cute little river turtles. They are sitting on little rocks or a little path or something. There's some grass, there's some water, reflection, shadows. This is a great reference photo. I got it off of Paul Clark's Facebook page, and he does, his wife does these Saturday challenges, and when it was turtles, I was like, oh yes, I gotta do this challenge, right? So I've already painted this. I don't know if some of you have seen it. I've posted it on my Instagram and some other places, just to let you know what I painted, right? So here is the actual painting that I did. So as you can see, it's pretty realistic. I would say pretty photorealistic for me, because I'm a loose watercolor painter. And I'm going to show you a couple details about this, that just to start, because I don't want you to have to be one of those that waits for the last 2 minutes of the video to learn something. So we're going to learn throughout this video. But if you notice in the photo, there's a lot of grass on the left. There's some shiny spots on the shell. There's lots of shadow. There's reflections in the water and shadows in the water. So what I love about this painting, this photo, is that there are a lot of areas that I can focus on to recreate in my painting that will bring out the photorealism in it. But when you see what I finished painting, those grasses on the left, they are not defined. They are very loose, which is my style. The thing I tried to make realistic was that shell. We wanted the shell to be photorealistic, right? And those rocks are pretty close to being realistic. The water as well is pretty good. Could have probably been a little darker in some areas, but I like to stay lighter more than dark. You can always darken. It's hard to lighten. So that's another little tip at the very beginning here. Also, I want you guys to realize that my paintings kind of start off like this. So you'll see when I go from a blank page to this stage, to the next stage, to the next stage. So this one was very light, but I'd already started layering some of the shadows in and getting a little bit more detail. So it's not the very first wash, but it's kind of, it's definitely, like, you can see the difference between the finished and this one. Like, there's some beginnings that are just loose and quick, and then details at the end. So I will show you everything in this one. Let's see. Oh, and today's tea, I'm going to start showing you guys what tea I'm drinking. So this is green tea blueberry slim life. It says it energizes and supports a dieting program. It also contains caffeine and herbal supplements. I don't know. We're gonna try doing that more so that you guys can drink some tea along with me. I've already had a cup of coffee. Normally I'm a 1 cup coffee person. And then I've been drinking tea with my videos on Mondays because that little bit of honey is supposed to help with my voice. But maybe I shouldn't make the first words out of my out of my mouth be to you guys. Maybe I should be doing like some vocal exercises before my video. If anyone has tips for creating a better voice with videos, please send me a message. Let me know what I should be doing. All right, so let's see. I don't know what that was. Something popped up. Let's look at my desk. I wanted to show you guys. Also, so step 1, a good reference photo. Step 2, a great sketch. And a sketch is like, did I draw eyes and lines? No, we are not making a drawing. We are sketching. So we definitely need a very good sketch to begin. Sometimes we think that we can create just from splashing some water and some paint, and that looks fun in a video that probably is not real on Instagram or YouTube. But for this video, we're going to be realistic in what we can achieve and what happens when we don't follow the steps. But this is very simple. I did draw this, and try and be accurate with your sketch. So your sketch should be accurate, because then you'll be able to achieve a more realistic painting. Of course, you need your paper towels. You need some high quality paints. I have Winsor Newton Professional. This was an original cheap set of paints from Hobby Lobby. I think Master's Touch, which is great to begin. But once you advance to a stage where you're like selling your art to people, commissions, whatnot, you need to upgrade to high quality. So each one of these have been replaced, and I've been using Winsor Newton. Do I even have a little tube of that to show y'all? Good to know. No, I don't. That seems highly unlikely. Okay, here we go. So this is one little tiny tube of alizarin crimson. So if you need more red, squeeze that in there. And same with all of these colors. If you run out of color, you just buy the tube. Sometimes the tubes cost $10, sometimes 15. It depends on the color, which I'm sure it's about sourcing the pigments for it. Anyways, good quality paints makes it easier. Good quality paper. So this is not the best quality right here. This is Canson XL that we're going to be painting on today. I think all of my Arch paper is at the studio. And so my Arch paper that's at the studio cannot be used while I'm at home. But that's okay. We are going to make do with the Canson XL. But it would be good if you used high quality papers, and that would be good. So good drawing, good paints, good papers. What about brushes, you might ask? So advanced brushes that I have are these black velvet silver edition, I believe. And these are travel, but you don't need travel. But I got these just because it was all the rage and my husband bought them for me. So I like them. There was a set of 4, so a variety of rounds is very important if you're going to create realism in watercolor, because you need different sizes. And the points really help. I have to say, I've lost all my riggers. I have no idea where all my rigger brushes went, but that's okay. I have ordered some more, and they weren't even expensive riggers, to be honest. And this set was a set of 5, so where's the 5th one? I have no idea. It is also missing. Could be at the studio, but that's okay. So this is my workhorse, this big one. I don't even know what size that is because the number wore off. But if you get this, it's a Land Nickel. Land Nickel? Is that the name of this brand? They are very good and inexpensive. And this is a workhorse, y'all. This one I've been using for 6 years and it's great. Love it, love it, love it. This is my fave. If you need a larger area, this nice flat one is great. I love this one as well. So really out of all of them, I use these 2. So we're going to use all of these. And at the end, I'm going to show you a very fabulous tip for realism. Can you see this? It's a jelly roll, 08. They do sell these in 3 packs if you want them. They also sell them in a pack of 05, 08, and 10. So you can have different thicknesses. I've found that these do not dry up quite like other white gel pens. So the white gel we're going to put on the shell to bring out those little tiny lines in the shell. So definitely stick around for the end of that. So now we can get this kind of out of the way. You know what we've been using, what I've been using anyways. Let's see what happens if I put them right there. And I'll be honest, I even got clean water for y'all. Look at that. You can see through the bottom. It's not black and murky like usual, which I think is hilarious. Take a sip. Okay, thank you guys for joining. It says that there are some people in the video watching, so I just appreciate y'all. Don't forget to like the video if you haven't already. Leave me a comment if you want. Ask a question. Encourage me throughout this process so I don't feel alone. But yes, this is fun. So I'm gonna be starting off with just this drawing on my paper, and I'm gonna use my flat brush, the large flat brush that I have, and I'm going to wet just around these turtles, okay? So you might be like, why are you doing the background first? Is that how you should do every painting? And I'll be honest with you, sometimes I don't start with the background. Sometimes I start with the subject and do the background last. But today we're going to start with what is the most simplest section. And when I took watercolor classes in my 20s, I thought it would be easy and fun, but it was not easy or fun. And I ended up quitting, not maybe quitting, but I just didn't do it again after the class. I just decided I didn't like it and it wasn't for me. And the reason I think it wasn't for me was because of the way I was taught. And I was taught to wet the whole paper and then start painting. Well, that can work for a lot of people, but for me it didn't. I'm going to use what's already on my palette. Sometimes we use what's on our palette and we are just like, okay. Now, if you don't have a messy palette like me, you can always create a messy palette, okay? Sometimes the best way to do that is to drop some clean water in different spots of your palette and just start getting everything nice and wet. So that rehydrates everything. So this is different than acrylics. You know, with acrylics you have to work fast while they are squeezed out of a tube so that they don't dry too fast. Look at all that jiggly water, jiggly. So we're gonna let that water kind of soak into those paints. But I also like to use Payne's Gray. A mixture of blues and browns mixed together is what you would want to use. And if you've noticed, I haven't really done too much on this part, right? I've just added some dirty paint in there. I mean, literally, that's all I've done. Let's see if I can do a close-up real quick. So you can see kind of what's happening here. This is the stage of the painting where the water on the surface of the paper will help move the paint. And I'm starting super light. This is super light. Also on the bottom, you can see these are also the same color kind of these rocks. So you know what I can do? Instead of doing wet and wet, which is what we did up here, I can just go in with wet on dry. And the reason I'm showing you this is because there's more than one way to do this. If you think I'm showing you this one way and that's the only way to do it, guess what? Wrong. Wrong. You can do it any old way you want. But I'm showing you the way that works for me, and hopefully that will work for you. So I have just added a little bit of gray right in here. And see how that's very simple and very loose. And it's not, I'm not trying to do detail. So, we're advanced people here now. We're advanced watercolor artists. And we're just going for a very simple, light wash. Like, barely can see it. I will be rinsing my brush a lot. I will be using a paper towel a lot. What I'll try and do is show you every step if I can. Because I don't want you guys to think that I'm trying to fool you here with magic. There's no magic in here, but I'll tell you what, we're going to be trusting the process. So right now, I am actually going pretty slow on this process because I like to let things dry before I paint next to them. So while we're doing the waiting game, which is letting that area there dry and that area there dry, there's two areas that are wet right now from paint, we're going to switch to my round brush that's this size. Whatever size that is, it may be a 12, maybe a 10, I'm not 100% sure, cannot remember, so I'm so sorry. But I'm going to give it a good soaking in that water, and we're going to mix up something for the shell. So I'm using Payne's Gray, and I'm dipping it right in there, letting it soak in some. But we're doing it super, super light. I want you to understand the light color of this. It's very, very light. It's like very, very light. So we are going in, and we're going to paint this one's shell. And I'm watching what I'm doing because I don't want to mess up and go in where the orange is. We got to preserve some of that orange. But in this stage, I'll be honest with you, it's not too big of a deal if I go too far over those lines I drew. It'll be okay. But look at how when I put my brush down like that, it deposits a bunch of paint. You might be like, oh, do you want that? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. I'm going to do both shells at the same time because why work harder when you can work smarter, right? So just putting all them little dibby dabbies of that Payne's Gray color. Now I did notice on his neck there's some yellow and some brown or gray or black or whatever color you want to call that. Payne's Gray. So we are not going to paint this Payne's Gray and then add yellow. because that would not work. Let me show you up close. If I try to paint this with this Payne's gray and then add yellow on top, it's gonna look muddy. So we're gonna pick the color that's the lightest, which is the yellow, and we'll paint the whole head yellow. But right now, what we're doing, painting the shells, this dark, well, not dark, but light gray. I think his tail is kind of the same color right here. So I may end up just doing that real light. He's got a little hand here as well, but his little hand is darker. I'm just gonna paint it real quick. This leg is sticking out and it's very pale, and it kind of disappears into the background. And it has some yellow on it, so I may just lift that up. Now, what if I make a mistake? You guys might be like, oh, she's gonna make a mistake. Well, sometimes that happens. But we are kind of like Bob Ross. Y'all like Bob Ross? You know? What does he say? Happy little mistakes or whatever? Yeah, he says it's okay. Hey, Beth, thank you for joining. So glad to see you again. I don't know if you're painting along or just watching, but we are painting these little turtles. They are so stinking cute, too. I like turtles. All right, the one thing I will show you, if you can look at the photo has these red markings on the shell, and they're with the gray and the black kind of mixing in together. So sometimes we gotta work fast. So let me show you. I have this really pretty alizarin crimson, I think, red. And if you're scared to just go right straight in, look at this. I have some scratch paper. Look at that. But I think that's good. We're gonna put red down the center of all of these, because that's what we can do. And you see how it's, every time I lift it up, it made a big blob. So maybe you don't want the big blobs, right? So we're gonna mix a little more Payne's gray. Let me see if I can show you my overhead. So see, I'm mixing this and maybe a little bit of brown that I already had kind of on my palette into that gray. Now I'm gonna just go around. Everything is really wet. And you guys got to be willing to embrace the stage that this is at, because sometimes our paintings look really ugly at the beginning, right? And this is super wet still. So I'm going to have to let this totally dry probably. That's kind of dry. So yeah, I'm just adding a little bit of a layer on there with that red, and see how it's bleeding in with that. It's kind of pretty if you see it up close. It's definitely moving around still on there. I'm leaving that part of the shell kind of light, and I'm going to rinse and dry on my paper towel. And next we're going to go tackle maybe this water over here. So the water is kind of this green yellow. And I'm going to mix some green over here in my palette. And it's kind of like a very pale green, to be honest. But we're just going to go right up against that edge. And we're going to go around. I didn't do this wet and wet, just going around all of that. And preserve if there's any really white highlights in your photo. But I'm looking at mine and there's not a ton of really whites in there. There is like right here a little rock or something. And there's like a couple little white areas down here, which the darker I go with the shadows, the more this will look like highlights. So we're trying not to do super detailed work yet. We're doing the basic parts right now. And I'm just going to fill this kind of in with some green. I'm not sure 100% where it stops and is shadowy, but we're just going to fill it in. So now I've got this whole thing mapped out. The only thing I haven't painted yet is the orange and the yellow on the turtles. So let's look how I'm going to mix that. How do we mix it? We get some of this nice little yellow, and we can even add it to my green over here. Might make some pretty areas, and you can even add some of that yellow in there to see if we like it, or you can test it on here. That might be a little too green. Let's add a little more yellow. Maybe just straight yellow from the palette. So now I'm going to go in here. Oops, I splattered. That's okay. We're going to fill in this head. Let's see what happened. Look at how that's bleeding up there. Because that was still wet. So sometimes we try and start something and everything's still wet around it. So that means we're going to have mess ups, right? But sometimes it's a happy little accident, just like Bob Ross says. So I might fill this whole part in with some yellow because I'm going to go in with the red, and there is a yellow stripe in there and the yellow under here. And this is going to be more orange, but there is a little bit of a yellow rim. So I may just fill that whole thing in with yellow just for fun. Just for fun. This is a rock right here. This is the shadow, which I don't know why I just painted that. That's okay. So what happens here, I want you to see, zoom, zoom. Look at this mistake. Is it really a mistake? We're just going to lift that out. So like, let's say you went too dark with your yellow and you want some highlights. You can lift. So now I've got some real pale yellows that I can use, which is perfect. So I just lifted that out, right? And that makes it easy to work with. So now we're going to let some of this dry. What I might focus on next is these rocks down here. So these rocks down here are very interesting because they have some kind of an orangey color down here, and they have like a gray area up here. So I don't know, maybe that's part of the turtle. I cannot tell. Maybe it is. So we're not going to paint that gray because I think it is part of the turtle, and this is part of the shadow of the turtle. Yep, that's what this is. So sometimes these shadows can be tricky, y'all. We're gonna just add, and if you have rough paper, if you do the dry brush technique, you would turn your brush on its side like this. Let me see if I can do that a little bit in a better area. So like just skipping across your paper. It's kind of hard to see it, and it's not real rough paper, but that's okay. Anyways, you can put that in there if you had rougher paper than me. But I do not have that rough paper. So now I'm just going to add a couple little details over at the top. The top of this paper I'm just going to add, because I want to add the second layer now. It's got some little lines in the in that area, but I don't want to touch the turtle head. It might bleed into there, so you got to be careful. But you can add a little bit of that shadowing where the layers of the rocks are, and see how that still blends with the white in there. It's starting to make some pretty colors in there. And also in here, I'm seeing a lot of grays, and I'm going to add that shadow in there a little bit more. And this should be more of a roundish. If I didn't get that rounded too good, let me see what happens. I'm just gonna erase that a little bit. So now I'm gonna add a little bit of blue, which I have some in my palette, this kind of turquoisey blue already, into my gray, and see what happens. Like, we might end up with something really pretty, like a pretty color. If you're nervous about a color, just go ahead and try it on a scratch piece of paper, and then you'll be able to see how it looks before you actually commit. But I'm going to commit to it. Oh, I don't think I drew, there's like a little leggy or tail right there. I don't think I drew it. So we're just going to try and go around where I think the leg is, or the tail. I don't know what that is. But it's dark, so I can do it at the end. I'm adding blues in here. There's some blue in this water. Blue by reflection. There's a shadow kind of right here. And I'm just going to put it in with some blue. Why? Because it makes it fun. Also, there's like a highlight right there, so don't let that be a discouragement. You gotta lift. If you paint something and it's supposed to have highlights, lift. See how I just lifted? And I dabbed it on a paper towel. So that's part of watercolor advanced skills, is painting and lifting. So you think, oh my gosh, I just put a bunch of paint down and now you're telling me to lift it. Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much what we do. I'm going to mix a little gray-green and put it under here. The gray-green is kind of at this bottom area, kind of like moss is growing there. And now I want to get some of that orange going. So I have several oranges on my palette. I have light oranges, dark oranges, so cad red, and just cad orange, cad red orange. There's all kinds of cads. So I'm going to use this one that's super dark, and we're going to go in to this area. I think it's dry. So you may be like, oh, I'm scared. But you got to trust. I'm doing this Bible study right now that is about a Sabbath rest. And the thing about a Sabbath rest sometimes is that we want to keep going, and doing all the providing for ourselves so that we can depend on it and know. That's just like the Israelites. They always wanted to know they had enough food for the next day, even though God said he would provide, right? But what do? They start hoarding the manna. And do you know what happened to the hoarded manna? It rotted and got worms in it, which that's a whole nother story I heard about Psalm 22, which is interesting, but that's a whole nother topic, right? So what ended up happening was the people would hoard the food and it would rot, except on the day before the Sabbath, because God would provide them double the amount of manna, and they would be able to store that for the next day, and it didn't rot, which isn't that cool? So I am going in here pretty thick, well, pretty light on this orange right here. And this one has a lot of dark orange in there. I may lift that out just to smooth it. Smooth it. But But if you're trying to do details at the very beginning, you're going to get frustrated with watercolor. Watercolor does not need super detail at the beginning. It's going to be super frustrating for you if that's what you're trying to do. It's not an acrylic painting. I'm not good at oil painting, so I really don't know what the thing is for oil painting. But for this, we're going to trust that the watercolor will do a lot of the work at the end, not the beginning. I'm gonna add maybe just a little bit of yellow in here because it kind of blends, and I like that. Maybe a little bit of that lighter color. Maybe a little bit right there. I'm trying to see where it's at. And if you go too dark, remember you can lift. Lifting is allowed. And there we go. I'm just lifting it because I feel like I went a little bit dark with that. But I can always go darker again. So rinse and dry your brush. Rinse and dry. Look at my paper towel. It's getting pretty saturated. The next little bit I might do is this water. If you guys are struggling with water reflections, this is good to learn. So I've already put some green in there. Now I'm going to start adding where I see darker areas of the green. I'm not doing all of the dark areas yet. I'm just doing some. There's a little hair. Get off of there. There's a hair on my paper. Come on. Doesn't want to go. So now I'm going to add just around the face a little bit. And I don't have to paint every rock that's in this photo. I can actually leave some out for the purpose of just artistic license, right? So if you don't like a rock that's in there, just get rid of it. But there's a lot of light colors in here. I want to put some darker in here. So it's already starting to look more and more like water. I can do a little bit of this gray that I mixed in with this green and do a little bit more shadows over here. And that looks kind of nice. Sometimes we got to preserve a little bit for our green leaves, but definitely going around this picture is what I'm seeing. Is you see me hopping from the stones up here and the stones down here to the shell to the water, to the shell down here to the head and tail. So you see me hopping around the whole painting, right? This is because you gotta keep everything flowing and loose. So I was adding some of this burnt sienna, but it's a little bit too, I don't know what color I want. Let's try that color. If your colors are muddy, like this looks kind of muddy, just start over. Maybe I need some yellow ochre in there. That might look good in there. So sometimes when you're not getting the right color, just go for something else. So now I'm seeing there's like this line. There might be some little dabs of color in there that are a little bit more orange. And then we want to add some more green. So like mixing colors, like the more you mix colors, the better you get at it. You may be thinking, oh, I'll never be good at mixing the right amount of green to yellow or green to gray, whatever color you're thinking that you need, right? So But you haven't really tried, right? So if you haven't really tried, you can't say you can't do it. But also, we're working light to dark. This is the most important thing. You work light to dark. You don't start painting in your dark shadows at the very beginning. I do want to put his little tail right in here. I think it's right in there. And he might have a little bit of yellow. And there's a weird shadow right there, but I'm not going to do the shadow yet. Now I'm going to go back and mix up another thing of Payne's Gray. This is really darker, because we want to go darker now, just on these shells, right? So I'm trying, because I did draw some of the shoots, so I'm trying to avoid those shoots too much. But I'm trying to go around, following what I'm seeing. And if I mess up on keeping some of these shoots, the whites between them, I go in with my gel pen at the end. This is kind of the fun part here, is using your brush. And you can go smaller than this. I just like this one for some detail. I'm trying to preserve a couple areas of that white in between. And this is where being an artist comes in handy. You just trust where your instincts are coming from. For me, I trust in the Lord to help me get these paintings done in an accurate manner. And he guides where I'm going to paint next. A lot of this, that's kind of where I was getting at with the whole saving and hoarding the manna. It's like they didn't trust God to provide for the next day. But here's the thing, is that this is a foot. I didn't even draw out that foot. Oh well. We'll just paint them in as we go. I'm adding just this little bit of darker area. I'm preserving some of the white in there. If you zoom in on this or anywhere else, you can see that I'm focusing on keeping some of the light areas, right? And then you can see some of the darker areas are starting to emerge. But these might not even be the darkest dark yet, right? May end up being, gotta preserve some of the white highlights in there for the shine on the shell. And then sometimes I get quiet when I focus. And if you want, you can always paint the whole thing and then lift where you think the highlights are, right? And then I'm seeing this is darker down here, trying to keep it light up at the top, but there is some definition. So I don't want to keep it too light right there. But see, already that shell is starting to pop. It's starting to pop. Let's do the other one. This other one back here. I need a little more Payne's Gray on my palette. Let's see. So now I'm going to go in and just go around the red areas that I already painted in. I'm just doing a little bit to try and bring it out. And this is when you can just trust the process of years of painting, right? That's what I'm kind of doing. I was a little nervous to do this video with y'all live because even though I know it will help you, even if I'm messing up, is that I just don't want y'all to think that I can't paint something, you know? I don't know if you ever feel that way. I think being an artist, you definitely put yourself out there. You know what I mean? And you're usually um, you're taking a chance that someone's gonna say something mean. Um, and you know what though? I've found that people are very nice. Y'all have been super nice to me. Y'all are awesome. All right, I'm going to put some of these darker areas that are on this part of the shell just because I didn't even draw them in, but that's okay. And then we're just going to add some more there. And he's got some dark under here. And my white still might, or my yellow might still be a little, might still be a little wet. So I may not be able to paint his little stripies yet. But he's got a leg right here and a leg right here. See that? And like this is going to be a lot darker too. So I'm going to add a second layer there. On his tail, we can start making some areas of this, kind of more details coming out. A little more detail there. This shadow, I can go ahead and use the same Payne's Gray that I've been using. Just give it another layer. So you might be like, layers and layers? Yes, layers and layers. Lots and lots of layers. I'm going to add some more up here because I see some shadows up in the rocks that are kind of fun. So I'm going to add them just a second layer in here. And if it's too dry, guess what you can do? You can wet it, and you can add a little bit of orangey colors in there. It doesn't really matter. Oops, see that shell? Wet, and it flows into that rock. So we're going to erase that. And we're just getting these values down right now. We're just trying to map the things out that are here. Might add some more blue in here. Might add some blue in there. Might add blue right there just because we'll help to reinforce that shadow, although it's not going to stay blue. It's going to get darker grays. Might put a little blue in this shadow. For the fun of it, right? Sometimes we do things, we're like, why are we doing it? Just for the fun of it sometimes. So now I'm going to go put some more Payne's Gray in my palette. See, I'm mixing it in. This is actually really neat. I want you guys to see what the granulation's happening with that orange. Isn't that amazing? That's like so pretty. But now I'm going to go in and I'm going to make some these darker shadows in here. Try and leave a little bit for some of these grasses. So you kind of paint around, if that makes sense. So I'm painting around where some of these blades of grass are going to come in. But I'm not trying to make it super high realistic at this point. We are just sticking to just some of it. Some of it is going to be rendered right now. Not all of it. Now, you might be saying, like, how do I know when? Ooh, that's a lot of green. If you get too much green, just rinse your brush and then wiggle your brush on it with some clean water. It'll make it kind of disappear. So see, this is going to be where my blades of grass are. So I left them. That's the leg. There's a tail there, I think. The heads are still not done. I think I do those last. At least that's what I did last time. Okay. It's really starting to come along. And I'm so glad because it's like, oh, I did start a little bit late. I thought this might be a time crunch. I went a little smaller, trying really hard to create create a realistic painting. It does take some more time when you do these things, okay? So I might be rushing this just a little bit, which means it won't be as perfect as it could be, okay? But it's okay if yours is not perfect the first few times you try and do this, because it does take some level of perfecting and practice. So I've always encouraged people, it's like, oh, what do you want it to be more like what the photos shows? And it's like, yeah, I do. And it's like, okay, well, sometimes we gotta practice then, right? We gotta practice and see what happens when we practice. All right, I'm liking that so far, but I want to just hit this with a little heat. Just a little bit of heat, okay? Now I'm going to go really small on my brush. Why? Because we're going to try and do those stripes on the neck. So I have already in my palette, look at this. This is kind of that grayish color, and it's pretty watery. It's not real dark. So we're going to go in, we're going to look at the photo that I have on my phone. You should always zoom in if you have to, like zoom, 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 right? Look at the difference. There's a highlight on his head. You have to be aware of light. What you're painting is the lights and the shadows in a way, the not necessarily the head of the turtle. You're painting the lights and the darks. So I'm going to just start by attempting to go this way and leaving some space for that yellow. And if you can't paint real tiny like this, maybe your hands are shaky, just remember, sorry, that you don't have to be perfect. Sorry. Woo! I don't know why that gets all. I just drank some tea. So I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. If I should try and zoom in a little bit more, but this is super light gray. So let me see if I can do even more close up. I guess this is my close up. I don't know. I can't zoom in. Hopefully you guys can zoom in on your screen. But see how light that is? It's super pale. And what I'll do is I'll go back in and I'll start darkening some areas. So see how I'm just doing this kind of here and there? I'm preserving that kind of lighter gray area right in there to keep it nice and realistic with that highlight. And if you want to do the scaly skin on there, you could at this point. So now I've got a second layer on his head, and that's already starting to look pretty good. It's not the darkest we can get it yet because it's going to be layers, right? And while I've got this kind of gray on here, I might go ahead and put some layers for his little I almost said paws, y'all. What are these called? Maybe flippers? Could be flippers. And you can make these as realistic as you want. The illusion of detail is what I count on a lot. I count on it a lot. So I'm adding another little layer of this darker gray, and it's already not as exact to the painting or to the photo, but I don't worry about that too much because I think it'll be fine because we'll end up with a more realistic painting if we just trust this little process that I'm doing. And look at what happens when you just drop in some paint and it just kind of flows. Isn't that kind of cool? I like that. So that's showing a lot of good, distinct things. And I'm going to go in with this little bit of small little brush strokes, just to start adding more detail, avoiding the some areas that I want to keep kind of a light color, dropping in a little bit of a darker area. I think some of this is still pretty wet, which is good because this kind of paper tends to dry really fast for whatever reason. But we are going to get kind of cool little striations, little wiggles around these shoots. And just let your brush do the work. And we can keep adding some details down in here. So see how his shell's coming along? His tail has to have a little dark here, a little dark there. There is some yellow. We'll just use this kind of greenish yellow. And then we can add some yellow right in here. It looks like there's some yellow right there. We're going to add some of this kind of cadmium red to this shell right here. So we're adding, right? We're adding some more color because we like this bright colors. So they're adding the colors where I see it. Sometimes when I see these bright colors and then like someone else comes in and they're like, I don't know if I see what you see. And I'm like, that's probably true. We probably see different things. Probably see different colors. Our eyes are different. Might go ahead and add some of that yellow on here. What more? Yellow, yellow, yellow. That doesn't look good. Let's see if we can erase that. Wiggle my brush on it. And there's going to be something in here that's kind of like a gray. So I'm going to mix in some grays and just touch. Let's see what happens when we touch right there. It just kind of flows a little bit, like it's part of the shell and it's bleeding into those other colors. So kind of like that. And all of this kind of goes together. There's some little feetsies in there. And I'm not trying to be too detailed. Like this is something that I don't normally do, but I think it's important to know. When I was in college, I wanted to learn how to paint somewhat realistic, and my teacher discouraged me from doing that. I don't know why. She's like, if you want to paint pretty pictures, I'll show you, but that's not art, is what she told me. I was like, really? That's not art? Okay. So then I got it in my head that I had to do abstract art, which I do love. Love to paint abstract. But what if you don't want to paint abstract? What if you do like to paint turtles or landscapes or some other really realistic looking stuff? Does that mean you shouldn't learn it? You should learn it. You absolutely should. Some dark areas here. I don't know if you guys can hear that helicopter going overhead. I'm just darkening some of this to make it look more like a shadow in there. And there is a shadow under this one's shell. That's going to end up being kind of dark. So put it in there, and then this part of his leggies a little darker, and then there's going to be some areas where I'm making the little lines on this guy's head. Might start with his nosy. Let's see. So I am not painting the yellow stripes, I'm painting the darker stripes. So remember we painted his whole head yellow, and now I'm just putting in these areas. There's his little eye. Try and preserve some of the yellow in his eye. And again, this is a good thing to try if you haven't tried it, is painting realistic. There's this one watercolor artist, he paints people, and he's from Japan, and it's just amazing. Amazing stuff. Always in awe of that artist's renderings. It looks like all of these little yellow lines kind of converge into smaller yellow lines down there. And like the top of his head is going to be like that. So see how his head's coming up already? And I know I didn't really preserve too much of the highlighting in here. That's supposed to be right in there. But that's because I'm going to go in and instead of making a highlight, I'm going to start painting the darker areas in there. And so that's what we're looking to do. Sometimes we paint the darker areas, right? We paint them darker, and so that brings out the highlights. And I think this is going to be a little different than how I did it before, but that's okay. I'm going to put that darker area in there. So that's his shadow. And see, this is when you can start bringing out your darker shadows. This is when you can do that. Hey, Suzanne. Hi there. Can you tell me what brand of watercolors you're using? So Winsor & Newton professional grade watercolor paints is what I like to use. I originally started about 6 years ago with a cheap tin of pan paints from Hobby Lobby, this one. And as I used up the colors, I replaced them with professional grade watercolor paints. So Winsor & Newton is what I really prefer. So I have pretty much replaced every single color in here because I've used them up. If you're starting off and you're a beginner, I would say invest in something that's like $10 to $20. That would be a good starting point of pan paints. And then as you improve your skills and your knowledge of water mixing, you can upgrade. I always upgrade paper first. So switch to Arch as soon as you feel comfortable doing so. Then I would do paints next and then brushes third. So, because I've been using this cheapo guy for a while. He's probably $2 brush. $2. And then this one is probably a $25 brush, which I'm like, woo, expensive. But that's okay. Sometimes we need these little guys, these little darker ones, right? So I'm just going in and doing a little bit more darker areas. And then I'm trying to preserve just the little area right there, adding some tiny little details just around the head. But see how I'm already rendering some of the dark areas? And that's what I was trying to tell you from the beginning, is like we're painting the light. So we want to go in and we want to paint the light. And I'm trying to stay away from painting the shoots that are white in between, but if you can't preserve those areas, it's okay. You can go in with the white gel pen at the end. And that's something that I do a lot of, okay? If your water starts to dry up on your pan, so like over here, this was starting to get kind of dried out, so I just dipped my brush in the water and added water back into what was already in the pan. I don't clean out my palettes very much. Oh, you're welcome, Suzanne. Thank you for watching. I feel like there's not a lot of advanced tutorials out there. And so I thought today would be a good day to show you a little more advanced techniques. Of course, it takes time to do the advanced. Like this is something that's, you know, we're at like almost an hour or a little over an hour. And I feel like sometimes we're trying to achieve this level with, you know, 10 minutes. And the problem is we're not going to be able to do something like this in 10 minutes. So when you watch a video that's like one of those short videos that is like 1 minute and it's time lapsed, it gives the illusion that they created this in, you know, a minute or two, when in reality it takes a lot longer, right? It takes a lot longer to do something like this. And it's okay, because I think when you start to really enjoy doing something like watercolor and you want to get better at it, when you practice every day with your watercolors, you'll learn your paints, you'll learn your brushes, and you'll learn your paper when you practice every day. So I always, I've been doing these cute little ACEO cards. In fact, I'm going to be trading with some people. But these are very loose watercolors. Some of them took 30 minutes, but some of them didn't take very long at all. In fact, do I have the ones that are quicks? Like 1 minute paintings. There's a quick painting I just watched with blue sky, turquoise water, the beach, the mountains, and the green. And then I used some pen work to bring out details. So if you want to do loose paintings, I would do them. You learn a lot from painting really loose with your watercolors. But if you're wanting to step up and do a little bit more advanced skills, I would highly recommend taking your time, sitting down with your paints and just letting it do stuff on the paper. And if it starts to mess up, remember, we can always blot it out. So those are the kind of things that can be saved. There's like a little yellow dot right here. I'm going to try and preserve that maybe this time. I didn't in my other painting. Did y'all see my other painting? If you're just joining, let me show you. So this is our photo reference. So that's the photo. And then this is my painting that I did the other day. So I didn't actually create that little yellow dot on the shell in this one. I did preserve some of the highlights on the shell, because see, back and forth, you'll see. I did the highlights on different areas, but it's still pretty realistic in my opinion. And then of course, let's see where we're at right now. So this one is at this stage. Here's the photo. And we're doing this. So we're getting there. We're getting there. It's a slow process sometimes. But that's, you know, sometimes we gotta let it do the slow process. Let me see what happens when we add a little bit more darker colors in here, because I am feeling like these areas of the shell need a little darker area. And then this is kind of going right into the neck area. So there's some lost edges between like the neck and the shell right there. So I'm just gonna go and I want to preserve around that. And then we've got some of this shell. These little shoots got some darker areas. And if you mess up your little white areas, don't worry about them. We can bring them back. We can bring them back. And really, if you think about what are we doing with watercolors? Are we just doing brain surgery? No. So if you mess up, it's the cost of your paper and your time, but it's not the end of the world. And I gotta remind myself that sometimes. I don't know if you needed that reminder, but I sometimes need that reminder. All right, I'm getting that in there. I'm working a lot on this guy in the background. For some reason. I kind of want to bring that red back in a little bit. Just a touch of it. There's a little bit in there. And then I'm going to add this Payne's Gray around it and see what happens when it blends together. I like that. That looks pretty good. And it does have a little bit of that. Maybe a little bit of that red. In some of these shoots, I didn't do it in the last one I painted. But that's okay. So I'm just going a little bit darker. And I'm just concentrating, so I'm sorry if I'm quiet. We sometimes gotta be quiet when we are focusing. I might go darker on these guys since I have some of the Payne's Gray on my brush. And this is part of his leg over here. We're just going to darken some of that. But leaving a couple of these little streaks of yellow. And we're going to darken just this part right here on his leg. And bring it down. And his yellow is not the same as what I did before, but that's okay. We're going to darken some of these little lines in here. Uh-oh. My lamp just went out. That's okay. This is a long video. Hopefully nothing else goes out. I should probably check the YouTube and make sure it's still going. That always happens to me if I go long. Oh, we're still going. We're going. Good, good, good. Good, good, good. We don't want to mess up the video because that would be tragic. So tragic. All right. I should have someone watch every time and then they can call me if anything happens. And I would be like, yes, please call me. All right. I'm gonna mix up a little more Paynes of the Gray. And see what I'm doing right in here. I'm just going around those edges a little bit. This one might have some more red in it too. So we may go back in and add that red in. But right now, I'm trying to do some of this, and it almost has like a blue in there. Let's mix some of that turquoise blue on top. So sometimes we see different colors, right, than someone else. So I'm seeing a little bit of blue in there. Now I can go back to the Payne's Gray and put that in there. Try and keep those shoots looking like they did. And then adding a little bit in here. A little bit in here. And that's looking good. Because see how I'm darkening my Payne's Gray in there. So I'm just adding another layer, right? We're doing more layers. That's what we want. We want more layers. And this shell has like a little divot in there. I'm just going to add that in there a little bit. There's some kind of color in there that I'm going to preserve. And see if that looks good. And I'm seeing a lot more reds in here, so let's just add it now. Sometimes we added the red too soon, right? We've got to add more red now. Gonna put a little bit of red in there. Maybe a little bit in there. A little bit right here. So now I'm rinsing my brush, I'm grabbing some Payne's Gray into it, and I'm going right next to that because I want it to kind of bleed into each other because that looks so much more realistic. Aren't these called painted turtles? Feeling like they are. I'm gonna leave some light in there. And then we're gonna go back in this area and just go over that just to make it go a little more smoothly. A little smoother. But I'm adding the darks, adding them darks into the shoots, into those shoots, right? Shoots. I was trying to learn how to spell shoots. I don't know if I spelt it right when I was posting. But this is what I like doing. It's just like focusing on all these little areas. And just letting my little brush dash around, dance around this whole thing. Let's see where it goes. Now I'm going to look at the tail since I've got some of this on here. Just adding. Sometimes when you lift, it deposits a lot of paint, and if you don't like that, you just go back in. Just go back into it. Now I'm going to add even more Payne's Gray into this section because it's his little footsie. And it doesn't have to be like hyper realistic in the shadows. So sometimes we're trying to paint shadows. Maybe I'll do this next time as we'll paint some leaves and trees and whatnot. But I'm just adding these darker areas, right? Because these are the areas that are in shadow. There's a little bit of variation up here. The little eye, he's got to have something there. Their eyes almost blend in like a lot. But your size brushes also is very important when you're doing these more realistic paintings. So if you don't have various sizes like these tiny little ones, I would recommend getting some. I don't know if I'm doing this mouth right, but that's okay. He's fine. He's gonna look fine. And where I'm doing these darks on the black, on the gray, we can do that with the yellow as we go back in. But right now I'm just adding it here and there. And sometimes I just start to get a little crazy, so if I start to do that, that's just like the Holy Spirit taking over. So I'm just adding where I see darks on the shadow of this shell. Just adding more and more layers, right? More and more layers. So see how it's popping? They're popping off the page. I'm spending a lot of time on the shell because that's gonna really make the most realistic parts. But when you're doing these hyper realistic or somewhat realistic anyways, paintings in watercolor, you want to focus on what's going to really make the impact for that. And so for me, it's always like the animal, the subject matter, it's going to make it look a little bit more realistic, in my opinion. So when you're doing these, you want to make sure that's the part you focus on. And what else we got here? This is his little leg. And I guess his leg has a lot of yellow on it. That's fine. This one has more black on it. I don't know if that's a leg or a tail. I always think it's a leg, but then I'm like, maybe not. All right, we're gonna switch brush size again because we're gonna start painting. We're gonna paint the water some more because I am letting the shell dry. So the shell needs to dry before I do anything else to it, right? So I'm going to get some green and a little bit of yellow, maybe a little bit of orange yellow, and I'm mixing it all up. Let me see if I can show you what I'm doing. So I'm mixing over here. So I see how I've got some yellow, some orange, yellow in there. I'm mixing up the color. That's gonna look more like what's in there in the water. And I'm going to skip some areas and leave some light areas. Because if you don't do that, you're going to forget there's water reflecting in there, right? So see how I'm skipping areas? You know what color I got. So I'm just skipping. Skipping these areas. And over here, there's some lighter areas as well. So I've skipped. So it's not quite realistic yet, but we will let it do its thing of soaking into the paper a little bit. I'll do a little bit over here maybe, and let that kind of blend over there. I feel like these rocks need a little bit more in them. So I might just do a little bit more on them. And this is starting to work a little bit of dry brush. There we go. I'm going to put a little bit more in here because there's some rock texture. So the drier your brush, the more it'll be able to skip around, right? And make these little gradations in there. And it's just kind of fun to do that. And just making that side of that brush work for me. And I'll put some right here. So my paint is kind of dry-ish. My brush is super dry. I'm just kind of lifting it upwards, letting it do Can you do too much on that? Yes, yes, you can. You can do too much on a lot of this, right? But I'm liking how that's looking so far. Now I'm going to add some dark Payne's gray up in here because I feel like it needs something. It's darker over here and I like the contrast. And so I'm trying to avoid my little stems that I did, my little blades of grass. But if I don't preserve them perfectly, it's okay. I'm not gonna worry about it too much. This has something kind of darken here. And I feel like I don't know if it's a shadow of that turtle, but I'm gonna make it blend into the shadow here. So this is when we start to focus on the shadows in the water. And we're trying to make it look like a reflection right there. So we can rinse and dry, and we're going to add some of that beautiful yellow green I had mixed. And it just softens that really nicely. Might just lift a little bit while I have the chance. It's still kind of wet, so I can lift where I want to lift for highlights. And you can make some blues, some more blue in here. Blue is one of those colors, it's just so pretty when you use it softly on the water to reflect some sky or reflect whatever. So that's starting to look like water. I'm going to add a little darker areas in here. Like it's going to blend around his extended leg. So sometimes I paint something and then I change it as I'm painting, which is something it's hard to teach, right? But when you start, you need to just experiment with it. I'm gonna add some darker in here too. So let's see, does that look good? Oh, he's looking okay. He's looking okay. I'm surprised it's looking as good as it is. I'm gonna go dark, super dark now. I need a smaller brush, but not too small. Let's see. This one. So I'm gonna rinse, and I'm just gonna pick up a bunch of Payne's gray. I'm gonna go right under here. This is the shadow on the rock. And I'm watching my photo reference. Now, is the shadow going to be the same color throughout? No. No, it's not. Some areas are lighter, some areas are darker. And so it's very important to be mindful of that. And that's why you just keep your eyes on it. Gotta keep your eye. Gotta keep your eyes there. Now I'm adding some of the darker areas under there, shadows, and then this tail's shadow is on this rock. It's kind of a curved area, which is kind of it's a weird little shadow right here. It almost has like a lost edge right in there. I guess, and there is a shadow over here, which I think is a little strange, but we'll add it. Why not, right? It's in the photo, but sometimes we don't have to paint exactly what we see. I'm going to start adding some some darks to this area. It's in the shadow. And then some darks under here. It's just a little Payne's gray added to that orange. Same down here, a little bit darker areas down here. So you see, I've had a lot of patience up until now, and now I'm kind of going fast again. So timing, y'all, is very important with getting more of these realistic looking areas. I'm gonna add, do I want to add this yellow? Which yellow do I want? I think it has a little bit of yellow right there. I think right there. I can go in with a darker yellow just to give some areas of the head. Like there's some areas that are a little darker because they're in the shadow. So that looks good. Sometimes we just don't know when to stop though, right? I don't know if you're like me. Sometimes I just keep going and I'm like, when do I stop? When do we stop? And I'm gonna loosen this area up just a little bit. I feel like it's a little bit too dark, too light there. Start getting blooms when I do stuff like this. But that's okay. Now I'm gonna do just a little bit of this blue-gray for the reflection of the shadow in that water. That looks pretty good. Might soften this area in here. Make it a shadowy area right in there. Where else can I shadow? Put a little bit of shadows in there and right in there. A little bit in these corners. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. I should probably watch, make sure make sure I'm doing what I should be doing. A little bit more shadow in there. So that's looking pretty good. And do a little more shadowing in here. All these little rock cracks. All these little rock cracks are really fun to paint. Now there's a shadow in the water right next to the rock's edge. And we're going to put some more in here. We're going to try and get closer to that area of his face. And that's looking pretty good. Just clean water sometimes helps. A little bit of blue maybe in here. You can go closer to that shell if you want. If you feel like it's too close to it, then don't worry about it. But I think that looks good. And I'm telling you, these shadows I put in, that's what's really bringing this painting to life. It's the shadows, the lights and the shadows. And I'm going to do these green. They're kind of a darker, realistic, well, brighter green in here. So I'm just going to do a couple. And I'm going to do some yellow. And then I'm going to erase Sometimes we erase. And I'm keeping it pretty loose over here. The thicker your paint, the more it'll stay in place. I think that's looking pretty good. I'm going to show you real quick the white gel pen technique. So I got my gel pen. And you know, you can do your gel pen at the very end, and I'll just show you really quick if I can. Do you see what I'm doing? See how I'm preserving these little shoots? So if you didn't do that, if you were kind of like, oh, I painted over all my shoots, shoot, then this is what you do to bring them back. You just do a little bit of gel pen. But I wouldn't get too caught up in trying to be perfect on these. What I do want you to notice, if you didn't keep like some of these little areas like this, they kind of go like that. I'm gonna zoom in so you guys can see, but I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. See how I'm just drawing like these little tiny lines right here? Those are like the little growth plates that are in, that all these turtles have. They have little growth plates. You can even count them. If you find a turtle, you can count them and see how many there are. Let's see how I'm just doing a little bit here and there. So you're just trying to just get some of these little guys, just a couple. And they're going to make it so that the rest fall into place, right? And it's just kind of, you can overdo these. I wouldn't try and overdo all of them. You know, don't try and put them all in. Just put some in. But some will make it look realistic. So now I'm putting in a couple up here. It's good to have a good gel pen. This one is pretty darn good. I like it. So now I'm going to add a couple of little spots in here that I lost along the way. If you want, you can add some pupils, things like that. Can add little dots. You can add little dots for eyes when you've painted a pet portrait or something. You can do that pretty easily with the gel pen. So I think that's looking pretty realistic there. So I don't know, you want to compare this one to my original one that I did in a couple hours as opposed to this one. So they're pretty close. I would say the one I spent a lot of time on was this one, and this one I just painted live with you guys. So I could go in with a little bit more, I don't know, like darker colors. I could use some colored pencils to bring out those blades of grass. Trying to think if there's anything else I should do before we say goodbye. But yeah, I think that's pretty good. I think and my light died on me, but I think that if you're getting more advanced in your skills and you want to push yourself to do more, you should try doing like photorealistic. And remember, the steps are just to have a good reference photo with lots of shadows and lights, highlights. Make sure you have a good drawing. You should have good paper, good paints, and good brushes in order to help you succeed at this level, at the advanced stage. And then you can, of course, keep zooming in on your picture on the phone if you're using your phone and the reference photo is there. I like to zoom in, like super details on there. See all that? So you can't get that if you have just a printout of a photo. Zooming in is really hard to do, at least for me. With my eyesight. I don't wear glasses for up close yet, but I think I'm getting there. So you know how I like to end with some scripture. I didn't even pre-pick anything yet, so let's see what we got. Okay, Romans 12:12. This is good, very good. It says, don't forget to base your happiness on your hope in Christ. When trials come, endure them patiently, steadfastly. Maintain the habit of prayer. Y'all, I remember not spending as much time in prayer, and it's kind of affected me. And then there was a time where I was always praying, like all the time, just like had my Bible, praying, writing prayers, post-it notes all over the place with prayers, just constantly reading my Bible, taking notes. And that was the thing that really drew me closer to the Lord. And painting in my Bible. So I do a painting. It's not really a class, but we have a little small group from church that we all paint in our Bibles together, and that's on Wednesdays. We do that. So it's a good little group of us that we encourage each other. We are helping each other improve our skills, but it's not even about how good you paint in your Bible. It's about spending time with God in your Bible. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know. We got probably space for y'all if you want to come. And I wanted to show you just my little painting one more time. I'll peel all these little tapes off. But what do you think? Looks pretty realistic. If I had more time, I could probably get it even better. But I don't want to keep you guys all day. So anyways, I hope you all are doing well. I pray for y'all. I love you. I thank you so much for being here and supporting me. And I just hope you have a blessed day. Mwah!